And it's just basketball. At the end of the day, it's just basketball.
Like and subscribe on the way in the door, my people. I hope you all are having a truly fantastic day today. Isiah Thomas, who I believe most people would have to agree that he's for sure a top 5 point guard of all time. I tend to believe that he is probably the second greatest point guard of all time behind Magic Johnson, who I believe, to me, Magic Johnson is to point guards what Michael Jordan is to everybody else, the definitive GOAT. And Magic Johnson, to me, is the definitive GOAT point guard. But I think Isiah Thomas is second. Again, before I was a Michael Jordan fan, I was a huge Bad Boy Pistons fan. And so, to me, the competitive spirit of Isiah Thomas, the tenacity in which he played with, and his skills, to me, one of the best ball handlers of all time. In my opinion, Isiah Thomas is that. But the relationship between Isiah Thomas and Michael Jordan current day is not a good one at all. And but despite that, there was a time when Isiah Thomas thought that Michael Jordan was the greatest player of all time, thought he was the greatest player he had ever seen, the greatest player he had ever played against. And that's what this coming article is about, coming from Basketball Network. So it says, in terms of my era and what I've seen and played against, he was the best ever. Isiah Thomas gave Michael Jordan an unexpected compliment after his last game. Thomas, who once fiercely battled Jordan and his Bulls, finally called MJ the best ever. It's one thing to receive a compliment from your contemporary or an analyst, but it's a completely different thing when that compliment comes from a rival that you used to have tough battles and even public spats with for almost a decade. That's exactly what happened after Michael Jordan's final game in a Wizards uniform jersey, in a Washington Wizards jersey, when he received his well-deserved flowers among all other legends of the game from Isiah Thomas. The rivalry between Zeke and MJ was one of the fiercest in NBA history, marked by intense battles on the court and tensions off it. Their clashes defined the ultra-physical era of the late 80s and early 90s, with the bad boy Detroit Pistons being one of the few teams that managed to stop Jordan's Chicago Bulls in his early years. However, the ending of GOAT's career buried the hatchet, at least for a moment. Quote, in terms of my era and what I've seen and played against, he was the best ever, said Thomas, who was the coach of the Indiana Pacers at the time. He was complete in every area. When you look at Bird, Magic Johnson, or myself, you could look at our game and say, there was one thing we couldn't do. I couldn't jump and fly high and dunk. Bird couldn't defend as good as Jordan. Magic couldn't defend and score as good as Jordan could, the Pistons legend added. But Jordan could do it all. He could defend. He could rebound. He could score. Then he was a freak athlete. He was the best athlete in the league. The long history of beefing. Their battles in the Eastern Conference were legendary, as Thomas bad boys used their infamous Jordan rules to physically punish MJ in his attempts to come into the paint and do his magic while also preventing him from reaching the finals. After years of frustration and heartbreak, Jordan and the Bulls finally overcame Detroit in 1991, sweeping them in the conference finals. However, the feud escalated when Thomas and the Pistons walked off the court without shaking hands, a move that Mike and, quite frankly, the whole basketball world never forgave. The tension between the two Hall of Fame guards reached its pinnacle when the legendary Dream Team squad was being formed. Isiah, who was one of the premier floor generals with 2 rings in his belt, never got the call, and many believe it was none other than Mike who played a role in that snub. Says, respect for just a moment. Despite their heated history, Thomas' words after Jordan's final game, which didn't quite go as MJ planned, showed a level of respect and even maturity that was not present in the relationship between the two legends. Zeke swallowed his pride and softened the edges of their rivalry, even for a brief moment. The whole world knew it at the time. MJ was the greatest basketball player to ever do it, but Isiah's words carry a bit more weight than that. Let's not fool ourselves. Their rivalry remains one of the most talked about in the association's history, and the relationship never healed. However, this moment served to prove that even the fiercest opponents can acknowledge greatness when they see it. So, again, this was coming from when Michael Jordan played his last game on the Washington Wizards. So, like I said, and like if you've been following this channel, you know that I was a bad boy Pistons fan before I was a Michael Jordan fan. And, you know, for all the reasons that, you know, them being competitors, them playing fiercely, I even, you know, back then liked the bad boy image. But as I got older, I started to see Isiah Thomas in a different light. And if you've seen other videos of me doing about Isiah Thomas, you know that I think Isiah Thomas has some characteristics similar to LeBron James, and that is, you know, not taking responsibility for your actions. And, you know, and like I said, to me, Isiah Thomas is the second greatest point guard of all time. You know, to me, underrated ball handler. To me, he's got one of the best handles of all time in the NBA. But the fact is, you know, I hear people try to defend the bad boy Pistons all the time in terms of, oh, well, everybody played physical back then. And yes, there was a lot more physicality. There was a lot more fights in the NBA in the 80s. But again, the Detroit Pistons cannot deny that the staple of their game was playing rougher than every other team in the league on a consistent basis. And the result of that was being disliked. Not to mention, Isiah had beefs with a lot of players in the league. You know, there was a thing between him and Bird. There was a thing between him and Magic. And obviously a thing between him and Michael Jordan. You know, to me, when you have problems with so many people, the problem is you, Isiah Thomas. You are the common denominator. You know, to me, when you can't admit that, hey, yeah, we played a style of basketball that ultimately rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, I can't respect that. And, you know, there are several instances of Isiah Thomas saying Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. You know, I feel like when he gets when he gets caught in a moment where he doesn't have the chip on his shoulder, or when he gets put in a situation where he would know he would look like a hater to not admit it, then we've seen him admit it. But in general, Isiah Thomas, you know, he doesn't like to give Jordan his credit, and that has been increased tenfold since The Last Dance came out. And the one thing I can't respect about it is, you know what I really respect, or the kind of people that I really respect are the people who can not agree or dislike someone, but their dislike of another person won't lead them to discredit what the other person has done. You know, it doesn't matter what field you're in. You know, you could be a musician. You know, my dislike for another musician will not make me try to diminish their greatness as a musician. It's like, if I don't like you as a musician, we don't have to like each other, you know, but being objective about what you do, like, I still can't take it away from you if you're actually a great musician. And so, you know, the thing that I respect about Michael Jordan is, despite the rivalry between Isiah, you know, Michael Jordan has consistently said that Isiah Thomas is the second greatest point guard next to next to Magic Johnson. He has consistently said that. He has never wavered from that. And to me, that says a lot when you can separate your emotions or your dislike from someone to still be objective about the situation and not let it, oh, well, I don't like Isiah Thomas, so, you know, now I think he's like the 10th greatest player of all time, or the 10th greatest point guard of all time. No, it's not like that. But Isiah, on the other hand, has clearly let his dislike for Michael Jordan cloud his ability to be objective. Now, in the article, you know, Isiah Thomas mentions why. He said, you know, when you look at myself and Magic and Bird, you can point out things with every one of us that was a weakness in our game. You know, he talked about his lack of high flying ability. He talked about Bird's not being able to defend like Michael. He talked about Magic not being able to defend a score like Michael. And, you know, and that's fair. And to me, you know, he was being objective to say, look, Michael Jordan has no weaknesses. He can do it all. He can score, he can rebound, he can defend, and he's the greatest athlete of our generation. So here's the question. If Isiah Thomas should so ever happen to see this video, just know that I was once a hardcore fan, and I'm still a fan of you as a basketball player. But if Isiah Thomas ever happened to see this video, and here, let me read this quote again. He says, when you look at Bird, Magic Johnson, or myself, you could look at our game and say there was one thing we couldn't do. I couldn't jump and fly and dunk. Bird couldn't defend as good as Jordan. Magic couldn't defend and score as good as Jordan. The Pistons legend added. But Jordan could do it all. He could defend, he could rebound, he could score. Then he was a freak athletically. He was the best athlete in the league. So now these are the reasons that Isiah Thomas gave for saying Michael Jordan was the best he's ever played against, for saying Michael Jordan was the best. So if the reason is because Michael Jordan had no weaknesses and you could point out things that yourself, Bird, and Magic couldn't do well, Isiah Thomas, how do you explain putting LeBron James over Michael Jordan? How do you explain putting someone who you could actually point out several flaws over Michael Jordan, Isiah Thomas? We would all love to know the answer to that question, because I would argue, you know, I think you were pretty spot on with your analysis, you know, saying you couldn't fly. You didn't say Bird wasn't a good defender. You just said he couldn't defend as good as Jordan. You said Magic Johnson couldn't defend and score as good as Jordan. So you didn't say he couldn't defend and score. We all know Magic Johnson could score. But you said as good as Jordan. Now, LeBron James, he can't score as good as Jordan. He can't defend as good as Jordan when he's given his best effort, but most of the time he doesn't even give the effort. He doesn't have the mentality of Jordan. He doesn't have that killer will. He's not as clutch as Jordan. He's not a good free throw shooter. He's not as skilled as Jordan. There are so many things about LeBron James that you can point to and say he's not as good as this at Jordan, as Michael Jordan is. That how could you ever put LeBron James above Jordan unless it's coming from a place of bitterness, of being disingenuous about what you say. So yeah, and like I said, that they've had the rivalry for years, but over the years, it seems like, it has increased for Isiah Thomas. And just like with everybody else who tries to slander the name of Michael Jordan or rewrite history about Michael Jordan never comes out and responds to anything. He doesn't respond to Isiah Thomas. He doesn't respond to Nick Wright and Shannon Sharp and the platinum members of the CFL. He doesn't respond to anybody because his game speaks for itself. You can try to say this about it. You can try to say that about it. But at the end of the day, when someone clicks on YouTube and looks up Michael Jordan highlights, or when someone clicks on YouTube and decides, I want to watch the 1991 finals, or if someone clicks on YouTube and say, I want to watch the game against the Celtics, and what was it, 86, where he scored 63. And the funny thing about the 63 is no one talks about that the game before he scored like 45. So the video evidence is always there. So no matter what people try to put out, the video evidence is always there. But anyway, we gonna hold up here. Let me know what you think in the comments, people. What do you think about the fact that after Michael Jordan's last game as a Wizard, Isiah Thomas had to admit that Michael Jordan was the best and the reasons that he gave for him being the best. And with that logic, the fact that Isiah Thomas has been pushing this LeBron James narrative for the last several years completely doesn't make sense. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. You all have a truly fantastic day. And I'll see you next time. All right.